Before we start the official afternoon session, we had the opportunity to do something so exciting. We don't normally do this. It's a lot of firsts today. But Frank had reached out to Jenny Beth Martin, who's long been a hero of mine. In fact, I was completely not political. I thought everybody thought the way I did, and it turns out, was I wrong? But it's through the Tea Party that I found my way into politics. And Jenny Beth Martin, of course, was one of the founders, past president of the Tea Party Patriots, and the whole Tea Party movement, which I've known of. But what I was not aware of was how involved she has been in the issue of intellectual property when it comes to China. And the theft of our intellectual property is a huge issue. And so when we were afforded the opportunity to have Jenny Beth speak, I said, oh my gosh, absolutely, how great is this? So please join me in welcoming Jenny Beth Martin.
For over a century, America has been the world's inventor, a country whose ideas and innovations transformed mankind. But today, our nation faces challenges at home and abroad. Challenges that threaten our economic and military security and the very idea of American greatness.
We have a great history of inventors in America who've done great things. The Wright brothers, Thomas Edison. We have a system that has encouraged people to be inventors, to solve problems by providing them with the ownership of what they actually created and patented.
How do we turn inventions into innovations? How do we turn an idea in an inventor's head or something in a lab or the garage into a real-world product or a real-world service that other people can use and enjoy? And that's the key of the patent system. That's what patents as property rights do.
A patent is a constitutionally created property right. It's something that our founders, our framers of our Constitution recognized.
Our patent system used to be very strong and reliable. That's no longer the case.
There's some big tech companies up here whispering in the ears of congressmen, sliding campaign donations to them and saying, we want you to dilute the patent system even more.
Patents haven't just played an important role in growing our economy. They played a key role in developing the technologies that have made our country safe.
Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party in the last 5 years have made it abundantly clear that they intend to not just compete with the United States, they intend to surpass us and to be the world leader in innovative technology.
Innovation drives economic security and national security. We've lost sight of what it is to protect this nation.
China's investing heavily in its own innovation, in its own military. They are serious competition for us. We need to up our game.
And they've gone, hang on a second, what if we don't just steal the technology? What if we steal the system that America actually operated successfully and we implemented in China? What if we out-America America? Dominating technology means you dominate the economy of the world. Dominate the economy of the world, you dominate the world itself. It all goes back to the question of who is going to develop the technologies of tomorrow. Clearly, this is a race that we cannot afford to lose because we're not going to have a country.
What you may not know is that Tea Party Patriots Action has produced several documentaries over the years. We did one on Obamacare called The Determinators, and one about the IRS targeting. And then we've done two on the patent system. And the first one was called Invalidated, and this one is called Innovation Race. And you may be wondering, we played the trailer first because I wanted to kind of show you that there is a threat to America regarding China related to our patent system. And you may be wondering, and so my job here today is to give you a different perspective of some of the things we need to be concerned about when it comes to China. what do patents have to do with anything, and why does it matter? I kind of wondered that when I first started learning about patents. And a few minutes ago, I was talking to Anne in the back of the room, and she said that she just keeps learning more and more and more, and sometimes it feels like really dark days. So this might be another one of those situations because you're peeling back another layer of the onion and going, oh wait, there's even more I need to be worried about. But let's talk about the good things about patents. And this is actually a very solvable problem. So I'm going to present a problem and then tell you ways that it can be solved. You may not know, unless you're an attorney or an inventor, that our Constitution actually protects patent rights and intellectual property rights in a way that had never been done before in history. And in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, it grants Congress the power to promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing, I can't even read my full handwriting, but by securing for a limited time to the authors and inventors exclusive rights to their respective writings and discoveries. So what that means is that when you invent something or when you write something, you own it for a period of time. And when it comes to patents, patents are what protects inventions. So trademarks protect like brands, like Coca-Cola would have a T next to their name. But patents protect inventions. And so a famous patent is one that you probably have seen many times, and it's the patent of what the light bulb looked like when it was being patented. So an inventor will come up with something, and in order to get the patent to protect their property for 20 years, they have to tell the entire world in writing everything about what they invented. So there's this huge risk to an inventor to go and say, hey, look, I thought of this and no one else ever has thought of it. It is my original idea, and I'm going to tell you everything I know about it. That's a risky thing to do. But in exchange for doing that, and the whole world can see it, I get to own it for 20 years, and I get to set the price on it for 20 years. You may be wondering, okay, cool. What does that have to do with anything? Think about what kind of writing instruments were used when the Constitution was written. Quill, parchment. What kind of writing instruments were used when the Bible was written? But it's pigskin, and it was kind of some sort of parchment or paper and quill, right? Maybe not exactly paper, but there weren't a lot of advancements in how things were written from the time the Bible was written until the time the Constitution was written. And then in previous countries before America, if you had an invention, the king owned it. It was the property of the king or the tyrant or the ruler, whoever it might be. And they owned it. So if you came up with an idea, it wasn't your idea, it belonged to the king. And the king would keep it and use it however the king wanted to use it. Then we protect these rights in a way that had never been done before. An invention in the world flourished because someone would come up with an idea and share it for the whole world to see, and someone else would look at that and go, oh wait, have you thought about this? If you take all of that and add this idea on top of it, we also have this. And then if you add another idea on top of it, you have this other idea, like electricity and light bulbs and airplanes, which become rocket ships, and telephones, which become phones in our hands, and computers and writing. We no longer have to rely on quill and paper. We can send a message right here, and instantaneously the whole world can see it. And all of that happened in 240 short years compared to thousands of years before it, because America protected innovation. And that's why it's important and something that you may not have thought of before. So we've done 2 documentaries. And I'm going to go through a few segments of our documentary called Innovation Race and explain some things that are concerning about what what is going on with China regarding our patent system. And the people in the documentary do a better job describing it than me, so I'm going to introduce it, and then we'll go through some of the portions of it. So we're going to play the next piece, and it is what you would think of when you traditionally think of the threat of China to patents and companies, and that is intellectual property theft.
China's a paradox sometimes. They looked at the United States and said a key feature of what has made the US so successful has been its patent system. China recognized at one point that they wanted to become an innovation economy themselves. They wanted to shift from being a manufacturer and a copier of other people's innovative products and services to being a source of innovation and creativity themselves. But they still do coercively take technologies from American innovators and companies. If you want to do business in China, you can't do business directly in China as a US company or as a German company or English company. You have to work through a Chinese company. And by working through a Chinese company, you have to enter into an agreement with them. And China required disclosure and transfer of all of your intellectual property to that Chinese company. Sometimes all of your intellectual property, not even just the intellectual property that covered the particular product that that Chinese company might be helping you manufacture in their country.
The stealing of intellectual property, the Department of Justice is valued at somewhere around $600 billion per year. And the FBI director has stated it is the largest transfer of wealth in human history.
We welcome competition, but cheating, not okay. Fraud, not okay. Cyber hacking, not okay.
We were concerned about their theft of our intellectual property going back to 2004, 2005, but there's now a pivot. The Chinese have a repeatable model in addressing our processes. It's evade, embrace, supplant. They do this routinely, evade, embrace, supplant. So first, when they evade, they attempt to go around our processes and systems.
This happened to GM in Shanghai when I lived there from 2002 to 2004. They were building Buicks in Shanghai. Pretty soon, there's a new factory down in southern China producing the exact same vehicles sold on another brand name. The company that GM partnered with took the technology, started their own company, and then began competing. So this happens all the time in China.
They realized correctly that without a strong intellectual property patent system, they would be dependent on stealing other inventions rather than inventing their own.
They realized that degrades and constrains their economic growth. So they go to the second stage, which is they embrace our patent process. So they want to learn about it, they participate it, they begin to mimic it.
Now they think that they are strong enough, so they want to protect what they believe is Chinese innovation.
They have improved their own patent system in order to foster innovation within China. They're doing this very successfully.
They went from copying our products and services to copying our patent system. They're really smart. They looked at the United States and said a key feature of what has made the US so successful has been its patent system. And where reliable and effective property rights are provided, that is where innovation and productive activities occur.
It encourages people to invest in Chinese-based startups with Chinese patents. Therefore, investors will invest in those. China ends up with all these startups that should be in America.
Third phase, which is supplant. Supplant means replace. Supplant means retire. It means in some ways they no longer need us. They feel confident. They feel they can do their own thing.
They foster a culture of innovation and strengthen creation, protection, and application of intellectual property.
Well, China's been very clear about what its goals are, and you can read it. It's the Made in China 2025 initiative, which Chinese ruler Xi Jinping implemented beginning in 2015, and the goal is to dominate 10 identified areas. These are tech areas, these are critical to the future. He's added an area, 5G, the fifth generation of wireless communications. But China's made it very clear they want to become self-sufficient, and they also want to dominate those technologies for everybody else as well. Really what they see is that they have a right to all of our stuff, and they have a right to protect all of theirs. It's very simple.
And whereas 20 years ago, it was mostly the case that China was stealing our inventions and our technology, now they are directly competing with us. If you look at the number of scientific papers published, the number of PhDs issued, the number of patents issued.
We see that there has been much increased interest in intellectual property throughout the world in the course of the last decade in particular, but this has been growing for a longer period of time. The top source of international patent applications found under the Patent Cooperation Treaty became, for the first time, China in 2019. China passed the United States of America. So this is an historic event.
It's clear the Chinese intend to beat us at our own game, to dominate the world IP system, to weaken the American IP system, and to become the country that invents and innovates and then prevents others from having access to those same inventions.
If another country becomes more innovative than us, they then set the baseline for the creation of these technologies. We have to go to them for those technologies. So if another country, China, is trying to develop base stations for 5G and other types of technologies and artificial intelligence, then we would have to get those technologies from them.
So traditionally, when you think of problems with the patent system in China and intellectual property, you think of the property theft and the transfer of intellectual property in order of an American company or any other international company to have China manufacture products or to sell to Chinese people. What we've found, though, now is that China is not, I'm sure it still does that, but that's not the biggest threat. They now are strengthening their patent system, at least giving the appearance of strengthening their patent system, while America is actually weakening our patent system. Now, when China strengthens its patent system, you're in this conference today, so you understand you can't trust China. They're horrible in human rights. So if they tell you that they're going to protect your intellectual property, it's only as good as the paper it's written on for as long as they decide it's good as. If they're willing to enslave people or do all the other kind of things that they do that violate human rights, you better believe they're not going to have any problem violating property rights. So, but right now, they're giving the impression that they're good on property rights. And what is it that America is doing that is weakening our system? It's three different primary areas. First, they have changed the way, if somebody is infringing, so you own this patent for 20 years, if somebody is infringing on it and they go and make a product that is your product, but they're not paying you to use your patents, normally you would be able to sue them for injunctive relief, meaning you could sue them and tell them that they've got to pay you if they're going to use that property, or they can just no longer use it. But now the courts have weakened injunctive relief and said that, no, we're not going to let you collect money for it anymore. So it makes it risky for you to go try to sue for it, and even if you do sue, you may not win even if you have the patent, which is kind of defeats the purpose of having the patent because it's supposed to protect those rights. The other thing it has done is that if a company sees your patent and they want to challenge it and say, oh no, it's not really your patent, they can do so, or they could start using your own patent and you're trying to get control of your patent and they're suing you for it. Instead of going through the normal court systems where you have judges who are either, like here, elected, but if they're federal judges, they have to go through a confirmation process in the Senate. So they have to be vetted and approved. And then there are rules for what is allowed for evidence, and there are rules for how appeals are going to happen. And these are set by the court system around the entire country. Well, instead of going through that, they created an administrative court full of people who are just appointed to the administrative court, and those people decide whether the patent is good or bad. It's called the Patent and Trademark Appeals Board. And it actually resides in the same building where the patent and trademark office is. So on one side of the building, they give out patents, and the other side of the building, they take patents away and invalidate the patents. And then the third problem is that we used to have first to invent. So if you were inventing something and you took a lot of notes and had documentation and proof that you were the one who thought of that idea first, you would be the owner of that idea and that patent. But now we got rid of first to invent, so it's first to file. And that weakens the system as well. So those are three specific things that have happened that weaken the system here in America. So if you're an inventor, and I've been to inventor clubs, I am not an inventor, but I've been to these clubs showing them our first documentary. Someone raised their hand and said, well, what do? I have this idea, and I want to make sure I protect it. And another inventor said, put it in a file cabinet and lock the door and don't open it and never let the world see it. Now, what if that is the cure to cancer or the solution to how we're going to beat China in a war with them, or whatever the idea is, like some brilliant idea that could change the way that we function and improve our lives and improve the lives for people around the entire world. There's no incentive for an inventor now to do this. There's actually risk for them to do it. But China is telling inventors, if you come here to China and patent with us, we'll protect your property for you, and you'll have patent rights in in China. And so some people who are inventing, who normally would have been patenting in America, are actually going to China now to patent. And that's why on that slide where we're showing China move up, that's part of how they have gone forward. So now I'm going to show you two more, one very quick clip and then one other clip that kind of shows how it's strengthening in China and weakening in America. So let's do the third clip, please.
Hi, my name is Don Marino. I'm actually here in Taiwan. It's where I live and where I work. I run a company, Asia Patent Group. So as I like to say, I'm a bit of a patent refugee out here in Asia. Not everybody in the US can locate Taiwan on a map, but Taiwan is an independent country. It's about 24 million people, has a presidency, a very vibrant democracy, a lot of freedom of the press. It is very different than the mainland China, both kind of politically and socially. When I started in the patent field, nobody even bothered to value Chinese patents because the view was there wasn't even a court in China that you could enforce your patents with. Additionally, there were no Chinese companies that were major brands in the world. You know, the US had a dominant position as the buyer of technology. Most of the PCs were sold in the US. A lot of the phones were sold in the US. Today, there are about 1 billion phones made in the world. Apple maybe makes 200 million of them. Samsung maybe makes 200 million of them. The rest of them are all made by Chinese companies. So you have huge companies like Huawei that only have about 120 billion in sales, control 15% of the patents in 4G, 5G space, which is the basic connection technology for cell phones. Apple, which has over twice the amount of sales, only has 3% of the patents. Huawei has less profits than Apple by about 80%. But Huawei is investing heavily in R&D. And they're converting that R&D into patents. Apple isn't.
I would put it to you that the next Sputnik moment is happening.
China is headed to Mars with this dramatic launch from the South China Sea. If successful, Tianwen-1 will be the first mission from any country to bring an orbiter, lander, and rover to Mars, all in its first mission.
Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party in the last 5 years have made it abundantly clear that they intend to not just compete with the United States, they intend to surpass us and to be the world leader in innovative technologies.
We need to up our game. China's investing heavily in its own innovation, in its own military. They are serious competition for us.
It wants to do everything itself. It wants to steal everyone's technology. It wants to be the sole manufacturer in the world.
China continues a rocket launch rate which has seen it lead the world in orbital launches over the past 2 years.
China recognized at one point they wanted to shift from being a manufacturer and a copier of other people's innovative products and services to being a source of innovation and creativity themselves.
They have improved their own education system and their own patent system in order to foster innovation within China. They're doing this very successfully.
The probe will fly by China's new orbital space station before firing its thrusters, sending it on a 6-month journey to Mars.
China has seen that the United States was the global leading country as of the turn of the last century, largely because of our global dominance in invention and innovation. Our patent system was recognized as the world's gold standard for years and years. Yet some of the changes to our patent law over the last decade have weakened it steadily.
Our patent system used to be very strong and reliable. That's no longer the case.
In the 90s and early 2000s, when I filed my patents, they meant something. They said, yes, you invented something and you can own this. But what's happened is that's been diluted.
Patents today are worth about half what they were worth a decade ago.
President Xi Jinping says China has ambitious goals for innovation in space.
Patents haven't just played an important role in growing our economy. They played a key role in developing the technologies that have made our country safe.
Innovation drives economic security and national security. We've lost sight of what it is to protect this nation.
And China plans to become a leading space power by 2045.
China has made a concerted effort to strengthen their own patent system, specifically to take over key future technologies.
And they've gone, hang on a second, what if we don't just steal the technology? What if we steal the system that America actually operated successfully and we implemented in China? What if we out-America America?
So China is investing in innovation. And it's not that America isn't investing in innovation, because I think American companies are, but it's more risky right now to invest in innovation as an American company because of how we have weakened the system. And China right now is strengthening their system, giving the perception of strengthening it, and that's creating real problems. In every documentary that you do, that we've done, we don't know all the answers when we first start out. So a lot of times our documentaries will hear a concept and we're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a really important documentary. Or it takes a very complex topic and we try to present it in a way that explains a problem and breaks it down for normal people to understand. But we also learn along the way. And one of the things that I learned during this documentary was how important Taiwan was. And I didn't really understand the importance of Taiwan before this documentary, so perhaps that makes me incredibly naive or uninformed, but I just didn't understand. And I used to program computers, but I didn't understand where semiconductors come from or just how important they were. And this documentary, I learned about it, and it wound up shifting so much of what I think. So dramatically, it shifted what I think, that when I saw Russia invading Ukraine, I thought, we have to be really careful about how we respond to Russia invading Ukraine, because that is an act of war. Saying that you're moving your border of your country is an act of war. And if we don't, whether we give money to them or not, if we don't say this is wrong, you're not allowed to do that, how in the world will we be able to stand on strong intellectual ground if China comes in and says, no, we're taking back Taiwan and it's going to be our country, and Taiwan doesn't have its own country anymore? So I'd like to show you this other clip from the documentary because it's what enlightened me to Taiwan.
For the last several years, we've sort of lost the manufacturing war with China. They have been willing to treat their employees worse. They've been willing to pollute their environment more than anybody here in the United States would do. So we've competed on our intellectual property. If we take that away, okay, if we give up on the manufacturing competition, and if we give up on the intellectual development competition, we become a nation of consumers, and we become wholly dependent on all the other nations.
That makes it a national security risk for us, because if we are getting equipment from them for our infrastructure, so we are putting in Chinese equipment in our telecommunications infrastructure and in the broader electronic infrastructure that will ultimately run our financial systems and potentially even our defense systems and the government, our cities and everything of the sort, with the flick of the switch, China could shut down our country.
When people talk about, China being aggressive, I always think about something very simple, which is how much of the Chinese GDP is tied to semiconductors. That's the linchpin technology in digital. It's all about the semiconductor.
The foundation of any information technology is the chips. Modern artificial intelligence is dependent upon these advanced, high-quality chips to collect the data, analyze the data, and action the data.
Semiconductor chips are absolutely essential in every weapon system the United States has, in every radar system, in every communication system. We could not have the world-leading advanced and sophisticated military that we have without world-class semiconductor chip manufacturing.
Making that semiconductor is really, really hard. I like to say that, in some ways it's like being a master chef, and each of the steps is a specific dish that you have to make. And it only works if every one of those dishes are made perfectly. The good news is, even though China has tried to build all these semiconductors, they don't really work very well. Their quality isn't any good. It might be 20 years before they catch up. So from where I'm sitting, within about 50 miles, about 35% of all the semiconductors are made in the world. TSMC. Chinese semiconductor industry, they're gonna need somebody like TSMC to make that key chip that makes all the other chips work together. Their electronics industry is between 20 and 30% of their GDP. If TSMC isn't making chips for them, it goes to zero. If all of a sudden TSMC has a problem and China can't get any of those chips, all those companies can't ship products, and they don't have the GDP that supports it. That's a big problem for China.
Ultimately, this is a communist state. In China, there are property laws. People may own things, quote unquote, but it will generally be temporary. And the problem here is that there's less room for foreign investors. There's less room for Chinese domestic private entrepreneurs. There's less room for this whole notion of private property. China's moving in very dangerous directions.
China's digital authoritarianism, which they are now exporting to other countries around the world, puts the state at the top of everything and the individual at the bottom. This is not a free and open society. It's as far from it as you can be in the modern world. And I think there's many Americans who aren't yet clear just what a fundamental challenge this is to the American way of life and to open societies, to democracies for this century and beyond.
It all goes back to the question of who is going to develop the technologies of tomorrow.
So the documentary itself is about 90 minutes long. I showed you 5 clips trying to just show you what this problem is. And I can't take a 90-minute documentary with so many experts in it and break it down in 30 minutes, or I couldn't even do it in 90 minutes. So I wanted to give you an overview. I encourage you to go to our website where you can learn how you can stream the video, and we also have a how-to guide so you can learn about the actions you can take. And you can go to innovationracemovie.com, innovationracemovie.com, to get that information. Now, I said this is a solvable problem, and I want to tell you what the solution really is. The solution is Congress needs to act. They need to pass a law. And the law doesn't have to be extraordinarily complicated. They need to restore first to invent. They need to restore injunctive relief and reset that the way that it should have been working and that it was working until the last decade or so when court decisions happened. And there may have been a law, I think there was actually a law that was passed as well while Barack Obama was president, but it was a bipartisan law that kind of affected injunctive relief. They need to go back and fix what they broke in that law. And then they need to get rid of the Patent and Trademark Appeals Board, the PTAB. I call it the death panel for patents. They need to get rid of that and allow patent appeals to go through the normal judicial process, so judges are hearing it, judges who've gone through a Senate confirmation process. And the argument might be, well, that will clog up our court systems. If that's going to clog up the court systems, maybe we need a few more judges. I don't know if that is the case, and perhaps that needs to happen. But the fact is, when you have an administrative board, and some of the administrative board works for tech giants, the small inventor is not going to get a fair shake in front of that board, and that's a real problem. So those are three simple things that can be done. If you noticed in the video clips that I was showing you, both Congressman Thomas Massey, who's a Republican and an inventor, and Senator Chris Coons, who is a Democrat, are in the documentary. The solution to this is actually a bipartisan solution, and when I've shown the first documentary to groups of people, especially as we showed it to inventors, it wasn't Republican gatherings. It wasn't like hardcore conservative war room type people. These are inventors in California even. So they're Republicans and Democrats. The problem that we have with this is something that can be fixed. And it seems to me when people understand what the problem is, there's bipartisan support to solve the problem. It's not overwhelming support for it because most people don't understand that there is a problem. So what I encourage you to do is watch the documentary, learn about it, educate people on it, and then we need to pass legislation. And in this Congress, nothing really important that I want is getting passed. So what do we do about that? My answer to that is twofold, and what we are working on at Tea Party Patriots Action right now. And that is that between now and November, we have a job as activists, and that job is to secure elections and win elections. And we need to be poll workers first and foremost, so go work your poll as a poll manager or other worker. And if you can't do that for some reason, then be a poll watcher and get involved with Voter GA and Garland's group and other groups that are working on other more broad issues for election integrity, but at the very least be a poll worker or a poll watcher so we know what's happening inside the precincts and can work to address and correct the issues. The other thing to do is to get out the vote and to make sure that we are electing people who share our values and want to solve the problems that you're hearing about today. And for this, once you educate yourself on the issue, you can ask candidates what they think and how they would vote on restoring the patent system. And you could even ask that at a state legislative level, because oftentimes people who run for state legislature later run for Congress. And if the problem isn't solved shortly, then we may still need to fix it. So kind of getting people on the record ahead of time is a way to understand where they stand on the issue. And then there's one more thing. So that's what I came in here to talk about today. And I don't want you to get too discouraged because it is a solvable problem. We in America have messed up our patent system in the last decade or so, maybe 12 years. We can fix it. We just need enough people to understand what the problem is and then to urge Congress to solve it. And we have to, because innovation is what's going to help us beat China. If you sit here today and you think, oh my goodness, all these problems with China, how are we going to solve it? Well, innovation is part of how we're going to solve that problem. It's how we helped defeat the Soviet Union, and it's part of how we will help defeat the problem we have with China. So that's what I came in here to talk about. At 7:30 this morning, I had a phone call that I have every single week with other national leaders of groups. And this particular call had a briefing from the chief investigator from the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party. And the briefing was about the problem with China. And I'm opening my phone because I just learned about this at 7:30, so I'm not even close to an expert on it. But it is, the House Select Committee has unveiled their findings in a report on the Chinese Communist Party. I always want to say the Chinese government. It's not. It's the CCP's role in the American fentanyl problem. What I didn't know until I had this briefing today is that China, the government is giving tax incentives to corporations in China to make fentanyl that they export to other countries like America, which then kills our American citizens. And they're giving tax incentives for it. And then they're putting the heads of these companies, which, you know, we would call warlords, on their China 5-year committee. So which apparently is very much like if we had a warlord in the cabinet at the White House. They're giving them special treatment and preferential treatment. And I was just blown away by this problem. So I want to send you a link to the website that has a video on the House government website. Because I just learned about this today. But if you text and sign up with us via text, we'll know that you texted us at this exact time, and we'll go back and send you a link for the video that they did. That's a 7-minute video that shows all of the problems, or you can search for it online. But if you text citizen to 85055, then Kevin and I will have someone from our team go back and send you the link for that video. And I just was completely blown away by it. And I thought you might want to know that there's even more, there's another layer of the onion that is the problem with China. And I think that as frustrating as all this is, and you sit there and you learn about it, and you just kind of, your mind, you don't know what to do because the problems seem really, really dark. But you're doing one of the most important things right now. You're educating yourself, you're getting the facts, and then the more facts that you have, the more you can go and educate others and help them understand that there's a problem that we need to address as a country. And frankly, the problems that we need to address as a country regarding China, I don't think are as much Republican-Democrat problems as they are the average American versus big business and big government colluding together against our interests. And so we need to just educate people so that we can try to get Congress and elected officials to take the actions that are needed to protect America and to protect America's greatness. So thank you very much for letting me speak, and thanks for being here today.